Welcome to the GFF podcast. We are now going live on YouTube, Facebook, and now added Twitter. And today I have this beautiful lady here. Her name is Janhavi Shirali. She's an MD doctor. She's also a rapid transformational therapy practitioner. That's how we met. We met when I went to an event that Marissa Peer was having. She was holding here in New York City, and I had the pleasure of meeting her, and I just had to have her on this podcast because she was really amazing to talk to. I loved her energy. I connect with people through energy, and talking to you and meeting you was so awesome, and I just wanted to have you on here. So welcome, Janhavi.
Thank you, Aram. The feeling was completely mutual. That beautiful night when we got to meet Marissa and actually got to meet other New York RTT practitioners, which was beautiful. So thank you for having me so much,
Yeah,
and
thank you
really
so
happy to
much
be
for being on.
here.
Yes, just to get us started, I like to let ask
Hmm.
people, whoever comes on, just to tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, what your cultural background is.
Sure. So, are you ready for like a 2 hour version? No.
Let's do it.
Um, yeah, where are you from is always, or where you grew up is always an interesting question for me, because I grew up in like 5 countries, and my ethnic background is Indian. So I was born in India in a city, Pune, which is near Bombay, and but then my parents, who I told me they're not fugitives, but we moved a lot. So I don't know. But we moved to England first when I was little, and then we moved back to India, and then we moved to the Middle East, to Abu Dhabi, and then I moved back to India for a year, and then we moved to Canada. We immigrated to Canada, and even within Canada, I moved to Saskatchewan, which is like in the middle of Canada. Think the middle of Canada and north. So it was like minus 40 degrees Celsius weather, very Canadian experience. It was an amazing experience, and I still have very good friends from there. But then we moved near Toronto to a city called Hamilton, and then I moved to Toronto. Um, and then I went to college in Toronto at University of Toronto, and then I moved to the US for my medical studies, and then I've been in the US ever since.
That, that's
So
amazing.
so it was quite an interesting childhood to move so much and be able to experience like so many different types of cultures and people, but we always went back to India frequently. So I feel very rooted in my roots in India because of that, plus like a very healthy dose of Bollywood music and movies and songs. So that's like the core of our culture. But yeah, I think that really influenced my desire to like work with people and just feel comfortable with people in many different cultures. And I was like the new kid in school so many times that I just got used to being a little bit like a chameleon, which is good. And also, you know, it's also when I was older, it took me time to like find who I really am because I was like a chameleon so much. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of my childhood, and now I live in New York City, which is this beautiful like combination of all cultures and people, and I love it. So
Wow, I love that. So, what do you think you've gathered, that you've learned, that you may be using right now from being exposed to so many different cultures at such a young age?
so I really believe like all people are the same. I think at the core, we all have like insecurities and highs and lows, and like the more I've learned about the human mind, that we all can fall like trapped to our anxieties, and we all like want our joy and want to keep it. So you want to hold on to the good stuff and you don't want more of the bad stuff. Um, so I think the I feel that people are just so similar, um, and that's kind of what I bond with when it comes to, like, I see a lot of patients in my clinic, and I work with clients as well in RTT. So I just feel like we're all unique. Of course, we have unique interests and characteristics, and that's what makes us beautiful, but at the same time we're all so similar. And especially in this world right now that's so polarized, even the people on the other side that like don't believe what we believe on these like major polarizing issues, even they're acting out of the same kind of fears or insecurities that we are. So that's sort of what I've learned and believe about humans.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you just said, and this thing about living in such a polarized world right now. Maybe this is a big question, but how, for you, just in your own world, your own individual world, how do you sort of try to bridge that gap? Do you do it
I
in terms of focusing less on the sort of, no, I'll let you go. You take it.
I think it comes down to the same thing, that even if you're polarized, I when I talk to people or meet somebody who maybe has a different viewpoint, at the end of the day, I still think like they're just a human with the same kind of um, joys and sorrows, or like similar stuff that I have, and so that it helps me to relate to them. Like if someone um doesn't want to, I shouldn't get too specific, but yeah, if somebody has a very different viewpoint, I would try to understand, like, okay, or live and let live. Like, fine, if you want to have that viewpoint, like, there's like a thousand other things that you can talk about, and we don't need to like duke it out on this one thing. But I have people I respect. Interestingly, with the science, like I'm a doctor, so like I'm very scientific, but I'm also somewhat spiritual, and I practice like RTT, and so there is this like science and spirituality kind of, your I believe in both, and I think there is a place for both. And I'm open to the gray areas. People are gray, like can't just sit in one camp or the other camp. So just seeing people for who they are and allowing people to have their opinions, I guess. um
Yeah. I so agree with that. And what you said earlier about, live and let live, I literally came across that this morning, and it really struck me because, like, yeah, like live and let live. It's really that simple. I think what happens is when we focus so much on the details, on the little things, we try to put like, separate the camp A, camp B, good and bad, as opposed to like seeing things in a more general lens, then we're able to hopefully have more compassion, even though we may not agree, but just come from a place of more compassion rather than, the opposite of that, which we won't mention.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And for you in your own practice, like your medical practice and your rapid transformational therapy practice, how is there a moment ever where those two come together somehow, or are they strictly separate?
So they are strictly separate in terms of, I suppose, the way my practices are. Like, I don't really bring in RTT into my professional work as a physician. Our It's more of like the setup is very different. The work that I do as RTT, I'm actually not practicing as a doctor. And that's something that is clear in like maybe the terms and conditions that I give to clients, because it would get a little messy and probably unprofessional if I started, doing RTT by practice. Like in medicine, there's very, you want to follow the training that you've had. Like I'm a board certified ophthalmologist, and there's a certain, standard of care, and my patients come to me expecting that standard of care, and I provide it. So in that way, it's separate. And RTT, I do it more for emotional issues, so confidence or stress, kind of looping negative thoughts, those, or like emotional eating. So in my eye clinic, the issues are completely separate. I'm doing like vision and ophthalmology related problems in my clinic, and more emotional um, problems in RTT. But I guess the similarity is that it's me doing it, and so you get the same kind of, what I bring in from my clinical practice is just like my empathy to work with people, because I've worked with people, with patients for so many years.
Mm,
And so the ability, I think what has helped me in RTT is the ability to not be scared of hard things or hard emotions. Like, my friends are always asking me, how do you do this? Sometimes it can get dark, you go into people's lives and the therapy can get, how do you do it? And I say, that's, I see like the positive side of it in RTT, that we actually are able to um, get the root cause of the problem, and reframe it, and empower the person to live a life without their problem.
mm,
So for me, like, I think those skills as a physician, to be able to hold someone's hand when somebody got something really scary in their eyes and I have to take it out, the same skill that helped me in that moment and that I've built for so many years in that moment, helps me be like a more empathetic practitioner in RTT. So I'm the same.
yeah, they have you in common and bring in that piece of empathy, because at the end of the day, you're still dealing with human beings. So that
Yep.
makes a lot of sense. And in your regular RTT practice, you mentioned going into people's lives, going into their minds, and sort of like sifting through the details of whatever it is that it's going on. And so you are able to do that without taking anything on with you. How do you do that? You just mentioned people ask you that question.
Yeah, I think I have that kind of objective detective mind. So when I'm working with a client, I'm able to just like, this is the problem, like, let's, and that's the beauty of RTT, is that it's not like we're just talking about, the problem at hand. And it's very different from traditional talk therapy. So you're actually going into, in a very objective way, like, what is the root cause of, see, someone's lack of confidence. And the beauty of it is that I like to focus on the reframe. So we have these like subconscious beliefs that are driving our behaviors, which is what we get into with RTT. And once you find the beliefs, it's like, that's like the detective work. You find the beliefs, and then you reframe them in that hypnosis.
Mhm.
um so I think that focusing on the positive, focusing on the fact that when someone is my client, that we are working on a solution, that at the end of the session, you actually get a 20-minute recording that you get to listen to every day, that's going to help you rewire those beliefs. So it's very solution focused, and it's very positive and empowering, in my opinion. So I don't really see it as like, oh, here's the problem. I have to talk about the problem. Like, I don't really see it like that. That's what I think helps me do the work, because I see it as like, let's find the solution. How can we get you from that A to the new version of you? And so I focus on, like, that's the purpose. So that's how I keep doing it, and I'm excited to do it. So
Yeah, I love that. I totally relate to that. And this thing with the positive outlook and the positive mindset that you bring onto it, with the transformation. Um, but like there are people who may not be interested in like rapid transformational therapy or any other sort of therapy, but want to bring in some positivity, because like that part is not always easy for people, because it's
Mhm.
always so much more
Right.
easier to focus on the negative, like we're so focused on it. How can you help someone or give them some tips that they can start to move away from the negative and more towards the positive?
So yeah, of course, even I mean, me myself, I can't sit here and say I'm positive all the time. Of course not. I think it's the first step, honestly, of this of us. We all want to feel better, right? We all like to feel good and joyful and happy, and most of us don't like feeling those crappy days when you're just feeling low and you don't want to get out of bed. And that happens to me too. Of course it does. I think one of the most important steps that you have available right now is to allow yourself to know that it's okay to feel that. You know, this the more we resist something, the more it builds. And if you allow yourself to feel those feelings, sometimes you need that day in bed or those few hours, or you need a good cry to let it out, and giving yourself the compassion and the self compassion to allow yourself to move through those emotions without judging yourself. Because usually what happens is if you have like a down day, or immediately your mind will go, oh, you know, what's wrong, what's going on, how can I fix this, you know, what's wrong with me, you know, is this because of that or that? And your mind just starts going crazy with all these, how do I fix this? And sometimes the answer is just to be with yourself. You know, you can do some journaling, but allow yourself to cry and move through that emotion. So I would say that is something that I remember, to not judge yourself every time you have some negative emotion, because really, like humans, we're not meant to only have positive emotions. That there's a movie, Inside Out, I think, that was so beautiful. Like it had the different emotions like sadness, anger, joy, jealousy. You know, we have to move through all these emotions, and that's normal and that's human, and it's okay. But I would say, obviously, if you get stuck in an emotion and you know you're sitting and festering for days, and then you're like, okay, I'm done with this. I want to be done with it. Then I'd say the next step would be to start kind of recognizing what is going on in this mind of yours. What are these stories that you're telling yourself? And like my like basics 101 of the mindset work is really that you are not your thoughts and you're not your emotions. And that sounds so simple, but it's actually really hard because, of course, when we start thinking thoughts, our brain is like, I believe everything that it's saying, you know, I don't have any friends, no one likes me, you don't look good today.
Mhm.
Every thought that goes in your brain, of course, you're like, oh, you know, uh, this is all like this all must be true. But in fact, I think the process of understanding that these thoughts are just passing by, and that once you start getting in a practice, it's like a muscle, like anything else. Once you start practicing, I call it like, first you recognize that you're in that kind of zone where it's you're not feeling right, or you're not feeling good. And you know, first is like recognition. Then you just pause and evaluate, what are all these thoughts going in my mind? And I do like a 3 step. You can start questioning your thoughts, and I teach some of this in the mindset courses that I have along with RTT. Um, but yeah, even 3 simple questions. This is from a book called Soundtracks. by, let me give you the author's name in case, it's by John Acuff, and it's called Soundtracks. And I really like it because it's very simple. And the first question is it true? The second question is it helpful? And the third question is it kind?
Mm,
And if you actually ask yourself these three questions, most of the time, is it true? Probably not, or maybe partially true. I mean, Byron Katie is another. I think she started, like, she's like the guru on this kind of questioning your thoughts work. But I really like these three questions, and it's just an easy way to start to unhook yourself from the thoughts that you start to believe all the time. And once you start questioning them, they sort of, you're like, oh, it's not true. Is it kind? No, it's not. And you can just let it pass, The again, the more you resist it, if you say, I can't think of a pink elephant right now, you're gonna think of the pink elephant.
mm.
So yeah, those are two or three kind of tips that I would say to get
Yeah,
started on this.
great tips. And it's like, so when you notice it and then you question them, is there a further step of, thinking positive? And what do you even think about that? Because there's like different schools of thoughts when it comes to thinking positive. Some people like, think positive doesn't work. Some people like, yeah,
Yeah.
you want to encourage yourself to think positively.
I think it depends. Like, sometimes when I question the thoughts and I realize that they are stories that my mind is telling me, then I try to let them go. So in the sense of, I don't necessarily like think positive, but um I maybe focus on something else, like, for example, if I'm having a thought, or I might do an action that will help me get to that feeling. So I'll give an example. Like, say if I'm having a thought, like I'm having a bad day, and it's COVID and winter and January, and I'm having this thought like, oh, I'm feeling lonely, and I know a lot of people are going through this right now, especially um that I'm feeling lonely, I have no friends, you just have this like lonely feeling. And then if your mind starts spinning out on these thoughts, you have no friends, then next thing down, you're a terrible person, next thing down, like no one likes you, that tumble dryer like will just start. And so for the example, like, if you can recognize, oh wow, these stories are coming hard and fast here. Like,
Yeah.
what is going on? And if you can do that pause and you can recognize that these are actually stories, and what is it that I actually need right now? Okay, I need some social interaction. And you can actually, okay, maybe that means I call a friend, or I ask somebody to go on a lunch date with me, or you can actually take like constructive solution based actions once you stop believing everything that your mind is saying. Because if you go down into that path, and I definitely have, of like following those thoughts and getting into that loop, then you're kind of in that, you're basically, those like thoughts end up creating a reaction in your body, because your body starts to feel stressed, you might feel like crying, then you have even more of those thoughts, and it becomes this like looping thing, and then it's really hard to get out of. And I have been there for, I would say, in the past, before I learned all this mindset work, and before RTT and coaching and things, like, I would spend days in like believing all these stories and all these thoughts, and the more you believe them, the more they become this like very well trodden path,
Yeah.
and then you're just like, oh, this happened, and here you are down that path again, and then here you are telling yourself this big story about your life. And I actually believe that's kind of, at least I would say personally for me, that led to a lot of suffering in the past, until, this didn't happen overnight. This is, I've
Mhm.
been doing this work for a couple of years now. So it's a practice. It's just a practice, and you start where you are, and you start trying to chip away at some of these stories. But I do think RTT is sort of a little bit of a fast track to these stories, because on a daily basis it's easier for me to do the mindset work because I have done RTT myself as a client. And any of these big stories that you have, these big traumas or these big triggers, that's where the RTT can help you reframe it on a subconscious level. So then you're not battling this all the time every day. It's easier for you to, like, what do they say? Ride the waves, because
Yeah,
you dealt with those big whirlpools of drama in your
yeah.
life.
And you go with the like downstream, go downstream.
Right.
It's easier than going upstream because you're downstream, you
Yeah.
go with the waves. It's like you sort of follow that. It makes sense
Yeah.
that it would be easier than, sort of hustling and working
Right.
so hard.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And this thing with the momentum, because I think that's what it is. Like when you are so deep into that on that hamster wheel, it's like that thought or that story has gained a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
it's like, how do you break that momentum? Because you, at some point, you have to sort of interrupt that momentum.
Yeah.
Like you said, doing it through listening to something, especially early in the morning when you're just waking up. That story doesn't have as much momentum yet. So that you can catch it by listening to a recording like that. That would help, I
Yeah.
think, sort of lessen the resistance because usually there is a lot of resistance to doing that.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. It's like the easier your your mind kind of works on these easily walked pathways, and that's what it is. It takes effort to, like, change that pathway. Um but it's not impossible. We're all trying.
Yeah, yeah, that's the practice.
So, yeah.
Everything is a practice. You
Totally.
have to be intentional about it, and it's like you just kind of ask yourself, how bad do you want it? Like how important is it for you to feel good?
Yeah, I actually think that is, it almost has to be, to, like, make the change, you have to get to that, what people say, rock bottom,
Mm,
or, the point at which you're like, I can't sit in this anymore.
yeah,
Um, and I do think that some people get to that point, it's not a fun point to be at, but um, I do think that that is what drives you at some point, because it's like, enough already. I don't want to feel this way anymore. Um, and if you are, fortunate enough to have any mentors or friends or books, like, I read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Like, that book was sort of the one that started it all for me. And you find, like, a good therapist or a life coach, that can help you along the way. But again, all these things need time and resources, and not everyone can do that. And I definitely feel there's a privilege in being able to, like, even be able to do any of this work, which I think sometimes not talked about enough. Um, it's a choice, but it's also a privilege to be able to take that choice.
yeah. And what you said about like just starting where you are, recognizing where you are, and obviously not comparing yourself to other people. They say comparison is like sort of the death
Yeah,
of happiness, but like there are also free resources. Yeah, like having a one-on-one opportunity is fantastic. It's awesome if you are in that place where you can have that. But if not, like there are free resources online, definitely YouTube that you can start
yeah,
with. Start where you are. I believe in simplicity. Like I think us human beings are prone to making things way more complicated than they're supposed to be. Like
totally. Yeah,
start where you are and just take one little step at a time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one actually, somebody early on, like, told me this, and I actually remember this every day, like especially if I'm having a bad day. It's like, what's one thing that you can do to bring you joy? Like one thing.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything? Are you like, is there even one thing you're doing?
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, I didn't have an answer. I was like, oh,
Mm.
interesting why I don't feel very joyful because I'm not doing anything to bring it into my life. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So even one thing, anything. Yeah.
And right there, I love what you just brought up because, like, taking your example since you mentioned it, like when you are in that moment or when you were in that moment where you're asking yourself, what is the one thing that I can do that could just move the needle a little bit towards, what I want to feel? So what if a person is there in that moment and they pick one thing? Like, it doesn't have to be a big thing, right? I'm assuming it could be something very
Yeah.
small. But what if there is like the motivation is not quite there? That's sort of like there's a shortage of motivation to actually get up and do it.
So I think the answer to that is to have the smallest step that you can take, the smallest one. So not like I have to meditate every day for 30 days. No. Like forget meditation because I know that's hard. That even for me it's hard and I try to practice. Um but maybe it's like dancing to a song for 2 minutes.
Yes.
Right? Like it's just can you pull like the smallest step that you can take that your brain does not get up and say no and have resistance to. And I think especially like I'm not a licensed mental health professional, so I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But I believe like in depression and a lot of mental, that the motivation is not there. And I think that's very hard because obviously how can you tell someone like, oh, just go do it if the motivation is not there? um so I'm not talking about like people like that are in clinical depression, but for like for most other people it's like coming down to that, what is the smallest step you can take and and take it, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
something. And then if you do that 30 seconds, the next day you do another 30 seconds, it can start to build. But just pick something really, really small.
Totally agree. And that sort of helps with not building up too much pressure on it because it's like
Right.
when you if you build the idea in your head that, oh, I must resolve everything now, I must be perfect, I must feel good right now, then it becomes daunting if that's not something that you're used to. So it would make
Yeah.
sense to, like, take little steps, just like take a small crack of it. Think of it as like, what is the path of least resistance right now?
Right. Exactly.
What is the path that would be easier for my mind to
Yeah.
welcome than like that big thing that I want? It
Mhm.
doesn't mean you still don't want that big thing. You want it, of course. That's a desire. It's not about like letting go of the desire.
Yeah.
On your way to that desire, there's a big gap. So what
Yeah.
is the small thing that is my mind is more ready to accept right now? And then start with
Yeah.
that.
I think the beauty of that is also that once you give yourself that pat on the back for the small thing, you kind of like do that positive reinforcement and you can start to feel a little bit more accomplished, even if it's like the 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Um, because I don't think like what is it like shouting at yourself and being like, why can't you do this?
Oh yeah.
You like so blah 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 that you can't even do that, like that line of encouragement doesn't really work very well, and if it does it doesn't last, at least for me it doesn't. um so if you do that small thing and you tell yourself, oh, you give yourself a pat on the back for that
Mhm.
small thing, put it on like your mirror and you give yourself like it's almost like sometimes you have to treat yourself like a child and
Yeah.
reward yourself for the small things that you do, and then the small things become bigger things. So
And
yeah.
Yeah, it's, I think it's also in line with like gratitude and appreciation. I think those two are so powerful and, pretty much one and the same, where you have appreciation for yourself, like the little things in life, for
Yeah,
yourself, for your environment, or whatever. And I understand, like, sometimes when you are in a place or somewhere that is like quite deep, people will be like, I don't want to see that, or I don't want to look at it, or I don't see it. I
yeah,
think at some point you sort of have to maybe encourage yourself a little bit to see it, because it's always there, like the positive and the negative, the gratitude or the
mhm,
lack of it is always there. But at some point you kind of have to make the choice to see it.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even something simple like three things you feel grateful for, even when you're in like a crappy circumstance, and uh, my sister just did this yesterday. Like her family's like, I mean, it's even in a bad situation. She was like, I'm still grateful for this, this, this. And I was like, that's amazing, that you can always find something to be grateful for. And it helps you to not feel so like victimized.
It's really powerful, and it's like so simple and so powerful. That's what I love it. I mean, like I said, I love simplicity, and there are little things that you can do. They're quite simple, and sometimes we forget. Like I've forgotten too, and like I get reminded, that thought comes to my mind. I was like, okay, look around, like what can you be appreciative about today? What can you be
Yeah.
grateful for?
Yeah.
And
Like, yeah, like even if you're in your bed and you're not if you're like upset, you're at least in your bed, you know?
I know, it's like, it's the bed is warm, like that's,
Yeah.
I personally feel that, like, when I'm like asked, and I'm like, it's nighttime, it's cold out there, and I'm in my bed and it's so warm and so comfortable. It's
Yeah,
like, I really do appreciate this. I am very grateful for this.
absolutely. Especially now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a good way to sort of switch your mood a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think that what else came to mind is like visualization. Someone, again, I picked this up somewhere that if you have like a memory of yourself, and I do this when I go swimming because I love the water. And if I'm in a pool or like even in the summer, like swimming in lakes or oceans, you kind of, I like close my eyes and like remember how that feels like with the sun or the water. And you can like take this photographic, like an emotional photograph of like what that actually feels like. And when you're in winter, you don't have water and swimming, you can actually like picture that. So you can take 2 minutes, but not just picture it in your mind, but actually feel it in your body. And if you can start utilizing like the memory of your body into your kind of like visualization, but focusing on the feelings that you have and what that sun would feel like on your, when you were swimming, you can actually switch your emotional state uh, in a cold, wintry day in January, sitting in your house, to the memory that you had when you were like swimming in the ocean under the sun.
Yeah.
So that's like another little mind trick that you can do, because our minds and bodies, our mind actually doesn't know what's real or imagined. If you actually can close your eyes and imagine feelings, textures, our mind imagination is so powerful that we can create like serotonin and dopamine and like nice hormones that activate to a previous memory now. So that's like another trick to bring in that sun on a cold, gloomy day.
And I think that's why it's so powerful to be present in the moment. Like when you're present, let's say when you're in the sun on that day and it's beautiful, and you are present in that moment, you are more likely to record that emotion.
Mhm.
You're more likely to remember it, because when you remember what it feels like, and you intentionally remember it and record it in your body and in your mind, later on it's easier to access it.
Mhm.
Easier when you're, like you feel like, okay, I want to remember what it feels like to feel the warm, water on my skin,
Yeah.
on a cold night day. You're sitting like, oh, I remember that. Okay, I want to feel that again. What did it feel like? And you intentionally remember it. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how powerful the mind is.
Yeah, it is. And that's what we've learned in RTT with Marissa Peer. Like she teaches the rules of the mind. And so much of it is just, it's so powerful, and we use our minds all the time to imagine like terrible things, and we worry, and our brain, like our survival mode kicks in, and our brain can imagine so many amazing terrible things,
Mhm.
but the same brain can imagine amazing great things too, and we forget
Absolutely.
that.
Yes, it's
So
literally the same thing, but it takes
yeah.
practice.
Yes. Yeah.
The reason why it's easier to worry and imagine all the terrible things that could happen is because we're used to it. It's familiar. So
Yeah.
you have to make you gotta get used to the opposite of it. But again, it takes time. It's practice, and be gentle on yourself,
Yeah,
throughout the process.
totally.
So I want to ask you about, you mentioned visualization. Visualization is one of those things that um, a lot of people, I've had clients who said that it's hard for them to visualize, that they can't visualize. What would you say to someone like that?
So I would ask them if they worry, and if they think of situations um, that they don't like. And I haven't met anyone who doesn't worry. So so yeah, I feel like I would ask them if they worry, and if they say yes, then I'd say, okay, so then you do have the power to visualize.
Hmm.
um, and it's just, what kind of things are you visualizing, and go from there. But if you can't get like a completely visual image in your mind, like that's fine. You can hear things. You can allow like your other senses. You can light a candle and smell it and use the power. We have other senses too. So obviously I think the visual system is cool. But yeah, I definitely think we can access other senses as well.
Yeah, and I guess also that's where again the practice comes in, and being intentional about that practice.
Yeah, I think even if you don't visualize images, visualize or feeling feelings is a really important thing. Like you can actually think of something that makes you happy,
Mhm.
or makes you feel at peace or content. And I do this practice when I do an RTT session. I will ask my clients, like, okay, if they're coming to me for stress and anxiety, I usually ask them, when was the last time, was there any time when you felt like relaxed or happy or content, satisfied? And they tell me a memory, and then I ask them to actually tell me how that feels in their body. So, not just the mind memory, but does it, and usually they feel light and airy, and feel free, not no constriction, they feel open. So there's, you can imagine what things feel like in your body and re-access them at that time too. So even if you can't picture the actual image.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really in the feels, and like I hope that most people or anybody who's watching really understands that it's available to you. It's really truly
Yeah.
possible. Like it's not some, thing for special people. It's
Yeah.
like available that ability to feel is available. It's just a matter of practicing it.
Yeah, absolutely, all the feels.
Yeah, I mean, like if you can feel, the bad feel, negative feelings, if you can feel those, you can feel the positive ones.
Yeah.
Like when you start practicing, you can get to a point of feeling more positive than negative. And I'm assuming that's like the goal for all of us, like kind of maybe the
Right.
80/20, or preferably the 95 and 5%.
Yeah. Yeah, to be completely honest, I feel like I'm getting more away, or like my own personal belief. I feel I'm coming more to the point of this thing that we're just meant to feel the range. And the goal for me is not to get stuck in one place. So if I'm stuck in like the anger or sadness, then it's like, okay, I have to address that. And but but I think overall, that idea that I have to be like 90% this, and that actually kind of messed with me a little bit, because then that in itself became this goal. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I have to do that now.
Yeah,
And letting go of that, and letting go of the pressure that you don't have to be, happy all the time, or you don't, you just move through life and be present and try to, if it's a sad moment, like live that sad moment. You need to feel grief sometimes and sadness, and that's okay.
it is okay, and it's that softness, that soft touch to it. Like, I think it goes back to not trying too hard.
Yeah.
Um, I found myself. I think it was a few days ago. I was meditating, and I found myself trying too hard. And and then I tell myself, don't try so hard. But then even trying to not try so hard was trying too hard. And in that moment I realized, okay, just get off the subject, like,
Yeah.
let's go do something else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that really helps. And that's the thing, that it comes back to noticing how you're feeling in the moment. Like, as long as you're aware of whatever it is that you're feeling in the moment, and like, if your intention is to move away from that negative emotion, it's fine. But how are you moving away from it? And are
Mhm.
you forcing it? Because when you're forcing it, it's less likely to happen.
It'll just come back to bite you.
Probably stronger than it was before.
Yeah.
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 It's like, that's why, like, in those moments, I think distraction is okay. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, and of
Yeah.
course, like, what type of distraction?
Yeah, but sometimes it is like, it's like you're, instead of sitting and, my mom always says this, the what is it? The idle mind is basically, if you're sitting there just, you're just not doing anything, and you're just sitting there ruminating and thinking and thinking and thinking, go find something else to do. Like, be productive, or like just do something else, like water your plants or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. Water your plants, go for
Yeah.
a walk. It's like,
Yeah.
call a friend who uplifts you.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. And it doesn't take much. It's just that, you know, don't try so hard.
Yeah. Let it be easy
Yeah, that
is
that's what I learned. And I've been playing this game with my friend, and every morning we send each other a text message about, today I choose, and then you choose a word. And today, what came to my mind was simplicity.
mm,
Actually, I went to bed with that word simplicity, and I
yeah.
woke up again with the word simplicity, and that's why I brought it up today. It's like really, I think a lot of times we're trying too hard. Like,
Yeah. No, that's true. And especially in this world of self-help and personal development, like there's so many books, there's so many teachers, there's so many courses. It can just, and I'm talking about my own experience too, it can just get a little overwhelming with the amount of information, and you can't really process like all that information.
yeah.
So even for myself, I've had to, okay, just if you pick one thing, then just keep it simple, right? Like, just implement that, integrate that into your life first before going on to the next thing. Having said that, I do have like 10 books on my Kindle that I've bought and haven't read. But I'm trying to keep it simple and focus on one book, or one thing at a time. But it's very easy to get pulled into that energy of like, maybe if I do all the courses, it will get me there faster. Like, no, no, you just have to live your life actually.
Yeah, totally. And especially for someone maybe who's just starting out or in a place where, like it's feeling a little hard maybe, or they're feeling some sort of resistance. How can you, if they want, and if you're like advising them, for instance, to just start with one thing and simplify it, like what do you think would be the one thing that they can start with?
So it depend on what it is and like what kind of a person are they. I would ask them, are they interested in book recommendations,
Mhm.
or I actually on my Instagram I had done a series of like every Saturday I would post like one of the books on my healing journey. So if they want a book, like I have book recommendations on like where just pick one to start with. Um, Alternatively, if they're interested in a course, or there's like so many things on YouTube, like the holistic psychologist, she's amazing, and she has a lot of content on YouTube herself. But it would depend, like if they have something specific that they want to work through, then I would recommend doing like one-on-one work, because having that person to guide you through whatever you're trying to solve and like find the solution for can really fast track and help you get to a place where you can start to feel better and like live a more confident or joyful life. But you don't have to do one-on-one either. So there's I depend on what kind of where they are and like start where they are. So maybe they read a book and get inspired and say, okay, now I'm ready to commit to something more.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, I want to talk about a little bit. You mentioned like a rock bottom. It's like when sort of there's this saying that goes something like, when the when the pain of remaining the
Yeah,
same outweighs the pain of changing, then we will change. Like,
really.
to me,
Yeah.
it's like the perfect definition of like
Yes.
the rock bottom.
Yes.
For you, like, have you ever had a rock bottom? And if you did, like, what was your way of getting out of it?
Yeah, I definitely did, and that was sort of what started this whole journey for me, and that was probably 3 years ago, 3 years ago, and again, it was like everything was fine, and that was my big lesson. Like circumstantially, everything was good. Like I had just started a new job as an attending, um, and I was living in New York City. Like I had just finished this sabbatical with my husband. Like from the outside, everything was like great, and but on the inside, it was like emotional turmoil, and it was just this Jekyll and Hyde thing. From the outside, everything was like so happy, and I'm so bubbly, and everything is great, and I've always been like this happy, bubbly person. And on the inside, I was like, crying every day, and I was just I didn't understand. I was like, this is not me. Something is not going, something is not working. And actually, it eventually did affect my outer space too. Like it started affecting how I was feeling at work. Um, and basically, that was when I ended up we have like a lot of exams to become certified, and I was always like I not only passed, but I used to get like top of the class. I was like typical Indian kid that studied a lot and like always did well, and this was like the last exam. It was an oral exam for the board certification, and I studied really hard in this period when I was feeling like so terrible, but I was still studying really hard, and I failed the exam. And it was kind of like this. I was like, wow, I did 13 years of education and passed everything and did great at everything to fail the very last step, like okay, this is my wake up call. This, like, should I leave medicine? Like, there were all these, I was like in this loop of negativity. And luckily, I had really good advice at that time from my support system around me, who told me to like just re-enter the exam again right away. Like, don't wait for it. And I did. And in like 3 more months, I did pass. But what happened in the middle was like my own kind of start of the healing journey, because um that's when I read The Untethered Soul, and it was like the "you are not your thoughts." And I think I was just so like trapped in my own like hormonal, probably, and emotional negative thoughts. And I started working with someone one on one, and started to like question those stories, and realize that these are all like fake stories. Like that one thing, are you doing anything to find joy today? No. Okay, so that's like a pretty important thing. And slowly starting to turn that around. And one kind of main thing that I changed at that time was something that I call the happy way. And that's why I called my Instagram account Your Happy Doc.
I love that, by the way.
Thanks. But the happy way, the second time I studied for the exam, I was actually under more pressure because I had already failed once. And I was pretty stressed out, but I had made this decision following the healing journey that I was on, that no matter what, I was going to do this exam like the happy way. I still studied, like maybe I'd put her like 2 hours in the morning before work, 2 hours in the night after work. I would still do like 4 hours every day, Saturday and Sunday. So I was still on a very solid study schedule. But outside of those hours, I was like, I'm going to enjoy, I'm going to have fun. I met friends, I did things I enjoyed. I went to like concert, I went for my dad's birthday in Canada, I went for a friend's wedding. Like the old me would have never done any of this. I would have just been like, it's study time, it's exam time, no fun allowed. Um, and so this sort of adoption of like, I'm still going to achieve the goal, but I'm going to put my mental health and joy as a top, and then let it happen the way it happens. Um, then I thankfully passed. And since then, I feel like I've like applied that to any other like hard situation that comes up, whether it's I like changed my job, I found a new job, and even some challenges, like anything that's difficult, I try to remember, can you do this in the happy way? Can you still do the task, but do it in a way that you still keep your mental health like as a priority? And that has kind of like helped me a lot. And yeah, so then that was that rock bottom to now. And I think RTT was like a big game changer for me, because it really changed, it addressed these hormonal like mood instability that like nobody else could help me with. Because it was at that time that I just didn't understand. Like I was like, everything is fine. Why do I still feel like these waves of horrible feeling, up and down, like, and then the RTT uncovered a lot of like the faulty beliefs that were driving those behaviors, and I haven't had those since. So yeah, that's my story.
Oh, I love that. This excites me. The happy way. You hear that,
Yeah, the
people?
happy way.
Please do it the happy way.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
easier way is the path of least resistance, like the happy
yeah,
way. I love that. Like that is
yeah.
perfect way to close this out. I have another question, which is, what does it mean to you to be free and fulfilled?
Ooh. Um, so to be free, I think to me means allowing the 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 so-called positive and the negative. To be free means clearing out those inner limiting beliefs that you have for yourself, and allowing yourself to feel empowered, that you are enough, that you are worthy, and that um, you have that like kind of limitless potential in you. So that's to be free and to be fulfilled. To me means being like doing something that is helping other people, but in that process you are also helping yourself. So it's like a bi-directional thing. It's not
Mhm.
like we're just giving, um but really like finding your why and doing your like living your purpose through that. So
Beautiful said. I love that. And just please let everyone know where they can find you and also what you have going on, what's happening, what do you have coming up, courses, and anything like that.
sure. So I am on Instagram as your underscore happy doc.
I love that name.
And
I really do.
what I did when I started my account, I wasn't an RTT practitioner, so it was more to talk about, just living life in this way. So you can find me on Instagram. I am launching my website very soon, so stay tuned for that. And I'll share that with you. It should be done in about a week. And in terms of working with me, I do mostly one on one work with clients, and I have a free discovery call. So, for anyone, if you are struggling with confidence or areas that you feel blocked, that you don't understand why, that's where I can help you. And yeah, so you can, so I do one-on-one sessions, but I am in the process of creating a course so that we can do something with a like a group course on mindset and sort of this taming your monkey mind and how to do subconscious work along with that conscious practice. So it's all coming and I'm super excited. And yeah,
Wow,
so
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love all of that. I will make sure that all of those links are linked into the show notes when this comes out. So thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on today and spending this time with us.
thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. It's been amazing. And I love being here. Thanks so much for having
Thank
me.
you. It was really fun. I love talking to you, and it's like it's been a blast. So thank you, and thank you everybody else for watching. Bethany, I saw you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching and listening. And peace out, everyone. I'll see you all hopefully next week. Bye.
Bye.